Hello, we are Look Left Studio and we are developing Chronos, the simple habit tracking app.
In case you've missed last sprint's video, Chronos is a tool that shows you what to do throughout the day so you can make informed decisions about how you choose to spend your time. Similar to other time blocking apps, you have the ability to visually see your daily actions logged as blocks. But what makes this app especially useful to us is the habits page. This is the page that will calculate what you do on average in whatever grouping of days you select. This feature shows you your habits by displaying what you frequently do at specific times of the day.
Last sprint, we ended by getting ready for our Helena, Montana workcation. Momo and my mountain bike flew for the first time, and both, bike excluded, arrived unscathed. Now that we're in our new home for the next month or so, we're ready to get settled in and get back to work.
To kick off this sprint, we wanted to try and finish as much of the features required for a minimal, viable product as possible. Before diving into some of the meatier portions of the project, like the habit timeline, we decided to wrap up some of the low-hanging fruit on the daily timeline that we mostly fleshed out last sprint. We thought it was important for those action blocks to be more than a nondescript, colorful blob, so that you can actually tell what you've been doing. When you click on an action block, you can see the title, start, and end times. We also added a delete button in case something is accidentally logged.
Since the main method for visualizing the actions that you've been doing is by the color of the action blocks, we needed to color the button so that there's a visual map between the action buttons and the action blocks. This required us to rework the action button graphics and how the icon is placed on the button. Some quick layering later, and we can modulate the color of the icons based on the color of the action. Now for a bit more code. Deleting actions is just as difficult as adding an action. If we delete an action block, we have to make sure that the habit timeline doesn't account for that action's data, and we have to ensure that the action won't come back when we reopen the app. The best way to start working on this feature before diving directly into hooking up the UI is through unit tests. Most of my work begins this way, where Jessica and I will discuss a feature, and before even considering how everything will be hooked up in the app, I start writing some tests. I want to make sure that when the delete button is finally hooked up, everything is going to work out smoothly. We have a few unit tests to ensure that when an action block is deleted, it is removed from the timeline, the habit timeline, and the history. Additionally, these tests ensure that the action delete signals are fired, and the action button is deleted if an action is deleted entirely. When developing these features, I start by writing a unit test that describes how I expect the feature to work. They crash at first, because just like in this example, I haven't written the delete function for an action block. After writing the test, I move to the production code and develop the delete functionality until my unit test passes. Then I'm off to the next test. At the end of the day, I've got this happy little green line, and the feature's ready to be hooked up into the UI, which is as simple as calling the delete function on an action block once the delete button is pressed.
In the meantime, we were also getting to experience life here in Helena. We have been going on runs, hikes, visiting coffee shops, and playing with Momo. The town is super cute and the sunsets never disappoint.
And now back to Chronos. Deleting actions probably aren't the only thing you'll want to do. Maybe you've decided that the icon you've chosen for work is wrong and you need to pick a new one. For this, we built out the icon picker pop-up. It actually created a great opportunity to think about how our icon buttons and containers are structured in general. This scene was remarkably similar to the container for action buttons, but required a simpler version of an action button that just passed along the icon instead of starting to track a given action. To simplify these scenes and avoid code duplication, we whipped out some good old-fashioned object-oriented programming. Each grid container inherits from the custom base icon picker class that contains a type of button that will fit into the container, along with some core functionality. Then, the icon picker and the action button grid have their own implementations of load all icons, which loads all instances of the button type into the grid. The icon picker loads the base icon picker button, which simply emits a signal with the action resource attached to the button. This action resource contains the icon image. I updated the action button to inherit the icon picker base class and extend it with its own required functionality. Now, anytime we need a grid of buttons, we've got some great base classes to get us started.
Those base classes actually became immediately useful when we decided to add the functionality for adding past actions to the timeline. These action drop buttons are just a simple extension of the icon picker button with the added functionality of drag and drop data that comes with Godot control nodes. A quick container to load these buttons, and a function on the timeline to add the action block when it is dropped onto the timeline node, and it works.
Oh, there's a problem. These shouldn't be allowed to go in the future. Let's fix that real quick. And there we go.
The habit timeline has to get all of this data somehow. At the moment, we are loading in all your data on ready when the habit timeline enters the scene when the app opens. But we need a way to update the page if the app has been open for a while. A simple refresh button does the trick, and we even have an animation using Godot's animation player that will play to let you know that it's refreshing.
To give the habit page a little more juice, we decided to animate the habit blocks when the timeline is refreshed as well. This was quickly accomplished using Godot's tween objects to modify the anchor points of the habit blocks. With all this new functionality, we thought it would be a great time to get Chronos on an iPhone and test it out some more. Turns out, iPhones don't have scroll wheels, so the zoom feature was entirely broken. I was thinking about modifying the mouse tracker, which also tracked touch inputs, to track 2 inputs at a time in order to implement zoom, but then I stumbled upon the Godot Touch Input Manager add-on. This comes out of the box with a zoom input, and with a few small tweaks to our control nodes, we started catching the zoom input to trigger timeline zooms. Some more quality of life improvements were quickly added, such as the action block info pop-up actually and finally showing info about the action block. And we also realized that adding past action pop-ups was a bit clunky. All it took to fix this was throwing the drag and drop code into an action button, and lo and behold, action buttons can now drag and drop directly to the timeline.
Once we had the app mostly functional on a phone, we found ourselves wanting some basic features such as creating new actions and editing existing ones. Creating new actions was quite easy. We just had to save the action data to the action save map and create an action button. Editing the action was similar to deleting an action. Once an action was edited, we had to refresh any scene that implemented that action, so action buttons, action blocks, and habit blocks got connected to one more signal for when an action was updated. We have wrestled with the challenge of mitigating pixelation with our visual elements. Every one of our icons and graphics boasts high-definition clarity, eschewing the realm of pixel art. It has emerged that the root of this predicament lay in our project viewport's dimensions, which, when insufficient, led to distortion and pixelation in our graphics. Thus, in our most recent developmental phase, we addressed this by recalibrating the viewport to match the dimensions of an iPhone 14 Pro. Furthermore, we ensured the dynamic adaptability of the viewport across various screen dimensions.
We also found that the way action blocks adjusted neighbors was a bit clunky. It was frustrating if you accidentally overwrote another action block, so with a few small tweaks to the block controller and the unit tests, we managed to get action blocks to only overwrite their neighbors once they've been deselected. Finally, we implemented what I think is one of the most important features of the app, day grouping. It's not likely that every single day of yours will be the same. Maybe you do different things on the weekends and during the week, or you work out only on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Or Dark and Darker just came out and you've dropped everything to play that full time. Who knows? Now, whatever your schedule, you can select days to be in a specific group. This way, when the habit timeline shows that you tend to spend a given day, it'll take into account your past actions from each day in the group. Barring a few open bugs that the unit test somehow managed not to catch, and some issues with exporting, the app is pretty close to being feature complete. We're hoping to get it there by next Wednesday, the 16th, because after that we'll both be on actual vacation for a week. Jessica will be chilling with her fam on a cruise to the Bahamas, and I'll be backpacking through Yellowstone with a few friends.
After that, our normal sprint schedule will resume, and we just might have an early version of the app ready for anyone who's excited to test it out.
That's it for now, and we'll catch you again next time.
See you later.
Bye!